Well, if you're starting an agency and you're looking at the difference between, because we've talked about that. There's two different kind of categories. You have this is an established market that I want to come into and take a chunk of market share away, right? You have proof of concept there and you know that it's happening and that it's self-sufficient. There's enough money in there for you to come in. But then you also have the just not served yet, right? And that's a 0 to 1 situation where you don't know if it's going to be viable or not. But if you're doing an agency, all you have to lose is time. And if you're at 0, that's not the worst thing that you can lose right now.
We've talked quite a bit about niches and kind of the importance of we have had two primary niche episodes. One is talking about the importance of establishing a niche, and the other one was talking about how to pick a niche. But there's something that's kind of lacking in this series of episodes around niches because a lot of people are still asking questions on them and pivoting niches way too often, at least in my opinion. And there's a particular girl that I follow on Facebook who is starting her own agency, and she is, jumping between one niche and another niche and another niche, and they're all kind of sub niches within the home service industry. And all of those niches I know are fantastic; they're great as long as you double down on it. You're not going to see
after. Just to clarify, is she going after any local? Or is she just looking online for anybody that'll?
It's on. Well, here's the thing. I think probably 30% of our listeners aren't in the U.S. They're 30% of our listeners aren't in native English speaking countries.
Oh, okay.
And
cool.
So
thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you. I think so. You have to consider too, like when you're in a country that's like in the Philippines or in India or in kind of the Middle East. Your target market, your good target market is not where you live. It's where like in the US or in like other English speaking kind of more business forward countries. Mm-hmm. And so targeting local usually isn't the best option. The best option is to try to establish a niche in another country. And that can be difficult if you're not a native English speaker. And one of the things that really sell is getting on the phone with somebody. Because you're kind of at like a disadvantage already, because especially if you're in America and you've got to talk to a bunch of, I don't know how to say it, xenophobic business owners.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it is, right?
Yeah. But like, I mean, 30% of our audience, it's still a large audience. 70% of our audience don't have to deal with this. But I think you can get past that barrier of just not being in that country by being an expert in the niche and showing that. So we really wanted to take the time today to talk about what it means to be an expert in a specific niche, which means you can't niche hop. You have to find one and you have to double down on it. And asking other people on the internet whether a niche is good or not is not a good way to determine whether a niche is good. When we covered this in episode 40 about how to pick your niche, those are good ways to determine whether a niche is good. You also shouldn't be looking at if other people are having success in them or not, because that can indirectly deter you from that niche if you feel like it's oversaturated. So for example, there's a lot of people in the roofing niche, a lot of marketing agencies who pick that niche. There's also a lot of marketing agencies who fail in that niche because they don't double down and they see the success other people are having in it, or they only see the internet success, which means just a false presentation of what's actually happening.
Well, if you're starting an agency and you're looking at the difference between, because we've talked about that. There's two different kind of categories. You have this is an established market that I want to come into and take a chunk of market share away, right? You have proof of concept there and you know that it's happening and that it's self-sufficient. there's enough money in there for you to come in. But then you also have the just not served yet, right? And that's a 0 to 1 situation where you don't know if it's going to be viable or not. But if you're doing an agency, all you have to lose is time. And if you're at 0, that's not the worst thing that you can lose right now. So think about it, but don't dwell on it. Just keep moving. Because 0 to 1 is also it's a cool thing. If you're looking at something like a niche or a market that you're just not sure if it's sustainable yet, go find out, right? You can do that. And then if it doesn't work, you lost some time, but that's not the absolute worst thing that could happen to you.
The easiest thing to do is pick a niche that you enjoy. So like if you enjoy something about that specific niche that you like, it's easier to become an expert in that. And that's kind of why I picked landscaping, because I really do feel like I actually enjoy the landscaping niche. So I'll kind of go over a couple of things. When I started Evergrow, I established my main philosophy was establishing kind of that industry expert persona in the niche. So I didn't want to just come in and say, I'll do your SEO and Google ads and then like pretend like I know anything about landscaping and lawn care. So the first thing I did was to become this expert is I just joined all of the groups and forums that I could find online. And once I did that, I got to see the other conversations that everybody else was having. It was, on, hey, how do I price a lawn that is this? How do I price this? How often do I change my mower blades or sharpen them? And just reading a lot of that and ingesting it and not constantly just looking for leads and opportunities to sell, but like also paying attention to what else is being asked. What are the other problems people are having that aren't marketing related? A really good example of this is when people talk about the labor problems that they have. It's not technically marketing related, but it kind of is, because if they're having labor problems and your job is to provide them leads that they can't execute, then labor is kind of your problem too. So like being able to kind of, as they say, speak the lingo and understand that, there's a difference between lawn care and lawn maintenance, not from a consumer standpoint, from a business owner standpoint. Lawn care typically means like fertilization and weed control and things like that, where lawn maintenance is like mowing and hedge trimming and things like that. So from a consumer standpoint, the consumer doesn't differentiate it. So knowing some of those really helps. But I'll tell you one thing that really got me started was listening to hearing the books that they're reading. And this is part of the reason why I started to read some of Gary Vee's stuff, and also started to read some of Grant Cardone's stuff, like Grant Cardone's 10X, is because a lot of the landscapers and lawn care guys, for lawn care, people who only do lawn care, we call them LCOs, lawn care operators. And so that's an industry term too that you won't know unless you're like in the industry. But they were, a lot of these guys at the time are reading like 10X and Gary Vee's Crush It. And then some other, there was another book called, I've got it. It's called the E-Myth Landscaping Contractor.
That's been redone for like every.
Yeah, the E-Myth. Yeah, the E-Myth was just the actual book. I think it was like by Michael C. Gerber or something like that.
He was kind of the first one to say you guys need processes and systems, and then everybody's redone it and called it what is the traction, and I don't know what the other ones are now. But so he did a landscaper version of it. So he talked to, had co-wrote it with someone who was in the landscaping industry and did, a relevant chapter. And it's written, like one chapter is written by him, and then the next chapter is the landscaper translating it to the landscaping industry. And so I read those three books, 10X, Crush It, and then the E-Myth. And that right there was able to get me to understand some of the mindsets that these guys were in, but also communicate that to them on like phone calls and sales calls.
some of these same concepts that they wanted to talk about. And there were a couple conversations at the beginning where like all we did was talk about those books, and it was kind of cool. At the same time, like I could really recommend those. Another one that changed not only my perception of business and how Evergrow is now operated from a financial standpoint, but also how a lot of these landscapers are also reading this book too. And it's allowed me to provide a lot of valuable insight to business owners in that niche, as well as other niches. But it's the Profit First book by Mike Michalowicz. Profit First. The concept of it, like, it didn't blow my mind, but it made so much sense. And just like creating walls between your money and then paying profit first before expenses. I brought that to Cody. I made Cody read it, and I think you read half of it, and you're like, is this just a blog post that's 120 pages?
Yeah, I read the first chapter, and then I saw the rest of the chapters and said, oh, okay, so this was a blog post that he turned into a book because he wanted to make money, which is fine. But I got it from the first chapter. So I just said, so this is what you want to do, Jake? And you said, yeah. And I said, okay, let's do it. Makes sense.
But yeah, I mean, the principles and practices in it are really good. And I think like almost any landscaper in the industry is doing some form of the Profit First system now. And that could be the case with other niches as well. So I highly recommend that book. And, to that effect, Cody and I were thinking about doing an episode later about like what books would be good to read as an agency owner. So if you find that interesting, let us know. We'll tell you the books that we read before this agency specifically. But Cody, I've been talking for a while. Do you want to interject?
You wrote down a lot more notes. I didn't write as many notes down for this because I'm not the industry expert really, and people don't really see me that way. What I do tell people though, because I do get asked, and it's not, I like this industry. I like the landscaping and lawn care guys. They're cool guys. But I do get, just because I do some other fringe things that are just comparatively weird. Like when I tell people I'm in Japan right now, they say, okay, why?
We've had a couple of clients that were like, that's cool. That's a great vacation. I'm like, well, it's not quite a vacation.
I'm working more than I did in the States. But yeah, so I just tell people and remind them, and I say, look, I became a specialist in home services. Local lead generation online is what I can do, and it's what I know. It doesn't matter if it's dentists or, any of those categories I can do, because they're pretty much the same. They have small nuances and differences, but as far as just the implementation for online marketing, it's all very similar. So I tell them my business partner picked it. I went along and it's been cool, right? We met cool people there. Mm-hmm. So, and
there's a lot of drama in the landscaping niche, and I love following it. And it's something that Lauren and I do before we go to bed. We're just like, what did this person post? And then just go to their YouTube channel and just watch their videos. It's great.
I did write down, I don't know what the quote is. Did you see Gladiator? Have you seen Gladiator? Russell Crowe?
I was just going to say Russell Crowe. I haven't seen it though, but okay. I do know he's in it.
There's a part of it, or one of the politicians says, look, I'm not one of the people, but I'm not one of the people, but I represent them. And it's the same thing I think about. It's always cringy when you see politicians putting on their farm shirts in Iowa, right? They like put on their farm shirts.
They roll their sleeves up.
Yeah. They walk around, they say corn, pigs, stuff, vote for me. I do farm stuff. And okay, it clearly works and it appeals to people, but you don't have to be completely in it. In fact, if you go too far, it's a little bit strange because they still want you to be the expert in the thing that you're the expert in. It'd be very weird if an accountant was operated in the exact same way that we did, right? It would just be a little bit strange. And I would wonder, but you're an accountant, right? Like you do the accountant thing. So I do expect there to be some sort of minor differences, and I think the clients in your industry would too. You don't have to be, you don't have to know and have built a retaining wall to do
That was a pun.
It was?
That was a landscaping pun.
So I didn't even know. Did I miss it? Did I mean to do
You
it?
said landscapers build retaining walls. That's a service they offer. And then you said you don't have to build a retaining wall. That was a pun for us.
Oh, sorry.
I feel like there was a joke opportunity there, and I just totally botched it by interjecting. So I'm just gonna let you continue.
No, I feel bad. I'm sorry. Like, I wanted you to have the joke.
That's okay.
Hopefully this makes sense. You have to know it very well, and you have to learn it. And there's the advantage to doing that. That is unavoidable, but you don't have to become 100% exactly like your clients. Right. Because you think about other cases like that, like if there was account's the best one I can think of, right? It comes across as cheesy and cringe. if
you like blend your personality in with
you just look like a politician, right? Just be yourself. It's fine. Right? You're doing something slightly different, and the way that you work is also different, and you want to be an expert when it comes to the topics, but if you go too far and you do the politician thing, it just, people aren't dumb.
It also, like, I mean, your target customer is going to change over time. When you first start, you're probably dealing with like the crass business owner who, like, will cuss and swear on the phone and just like, is kind of, borderline racist. But like, as you grow, you start dealing with bigger and bigger clients who are a lot more professional, and they don't mirror that image at all. And like, we've experienced this too. And like, especially now, like all of the prospects and clients that come to us are very much more of a corporate level. Mm-hmm. And, thank God we didn't change our identity or, have an identity based on our initial clients. However, it was still good to know the industry terminology and be able to speak to them on an intelligent level while still having our own personality. Mm-hmm. And like knowing, and especially being like an industry expert, there's one thing that really sets us apart from other agencies out there. And that's just knowing the equipment and the services they offer. Mm-hmm. Because when we build a website, I can't tell you how many times I've had clients or prospects come to us that want a website build, and they're like, yeah, I hired this agency over, here, and they like I just hate my website. They've used pictures of like push lawn mowers or like just stuff that homeowners would use and not like commercial contractors, because they didn't understand the industry. And just by you being able to say something like, yeah, we're not going to use a Scott's turf spreader on your fertilization page. Like, we'll look for the commercial Lesco spreaders. Like, just by you saying that instills so much confidence in them as a potential client. And I think that's just like what a lot of people lack. But to that aspect too, I think the number one thing is also knowing how much a client is worth to someone in your niche. Like for us, I can tell you right now that the industry average close rate is 50%. So for every 2 leads that you provide, they will close one of them. That's just on average. The industry average profit margin is 10%. That's net profit after all expenses, taxes, and everything. Everything comes out between 10 and 20%. The average lifetime or the average yearly revenue from just a standard mowing and maintenance account is between $1,000 and $2,000. So about $1,500, we can say. The average lifetime of a maintenance account is 5 years. So, and these aren't numbers that I'm just like making up or that like I've had reported to me. Lawn and Landscape Magazine publishes these, which is an industry publication. So knowing the publications, so you can get some of this information. If you don't have this information, you can totally ask all of your clients and prospects. Nothing wrong with that. But I can't tell you how many times that I've done this exercise with our clients on trying to figure out what their target cost per acquisition is based on their own numbers, based on their own close rate, their own profit margins, and being able to say, like, here's what the industry standard is. Is yours anywhere near that? And usually it's yes. So they already know that I know the industry standards. I'm able to calculate using this formula how much they should be willing to pay for a lead that we provide and still make a profit. And if you don't know that, it doesn't, it's going to be hard for you to even price your own services because you don't know the industry. If our services are $500 management fees for this landscaping industry, it might be totally different for serving doctors. Our management fee for doctors and like clinics might be like $2,000 because we don't know. Maybe there's HIPAA compliance. Maybe they make way more money per lead. Maybe their cost per click is, extremely higher and we have to compensate for that.
Yeah, I think that's critical. I think knowing the finances and the numbers and the money, both at the bottom and at the top. In the middle, you find people who are just good schmoozers, and that's great. Mm-hmm. Like, cool, that's a skill. And if you're good at that and you could lean on that, that's awesome. But so, for example, somebody who is overseas and then trying to prove their value, their worth, and that sort of thing, especially in marketing. If you show that you have an understanding of the financials, because marketers are terrible with money. There's a reason that, CMOs stay CMOs, not COOs or CEOs. And it's,
Who said it? Someone said that if you like CMOs are a worthless position, like they should be fired. I can't remember. I think it was like, I can't. It was someone big. It was like a Rand Fishkin, or if it was like a John Mueller or something like that, where he's like, they're like CMOs is a worthless job title.
Yeah,
maybe it was Grant Cardone. I can't remember. It was some big.
But it's I get it, right? And I think especially if you're so if you're listening to this, you're not just a marketer. You are also a business owner. And you need to understand finances like a business owner, and that means your clients and how their finances work too. Otherwise, how can you go and prove to them that what you're doing is worth their money if you don't know it? So that's the first thing you have to do, is find that out. And that's, I think, another recommendation I would give too is if you are overseas and trying to build relationships in a foreign country, then you're probably not going to have a ton of luck just fishing around trying to grab anything that you can get and assuming that you're going to build from that. I think the first thing that you should try to do is just build connections. And saying it that way doesn't even help, because I think it gives the wrong idea. You just got to make friends. You got to talk to these people and actually become their friend.
Episode 11. It's Chase relationships.
Yeah, there's no other way it's going to work, right? I think so. For example, me even being in Japan right now and how that happened was very complicated and not easy. I reached out through the Sister City program. It took several months of planning. And now that I'm here, everything's great. And I've been able to start building relationships and that sort of thing too. So there's always that benefit of being in person. But so you can't do that, right? It still starts with, okay, let's have an initial point of contact. And then how can I build up on this friendship and keep progressing it? So let's say you start in a Facebook group or something like that. Maybe you get their personal contact information, and then you're able to start messaging them via just Messenger. After that, maybe you can finally set up some sort of video call, and not to pitch, just to get to know them, just to find out who they are, what their life is like. And that's critically important, that you don't jump the gun too fast because you're greedy for money, because it's just not going to work. Your first few clients and that sort of thing, if this is, and then again, you should be thinking that this isn't a 1-year goal, right? This is a 5 to 10 year goal. This sort of thing you're not going to be able to accomplish to the level that you want to do within just 1 year, especially if you are starting from zero and you have to build these sort of relationships too. I tell people too often, because they say, wow, when you partner with Jake, you guys took off really fast. I'm like, yeah, Jake did like 2 years of groundwork that I just got to sign up afterwards. It was great. It was amazing.
A year and a half.
Huh? a year and a half. But you can't say he was doing nothing. He was doing a ton. Like, there's there's incredible and immense value in that part of the business that does not yet equate to exact dollars. But you have to do it, and it takes time, and there isn't money in it, and you can't really gamify it. You just have to be honest that you actually genuinely want to do that and get to know those people and become involved in their lives. That's weird because it's business, but that's how small business is.
And how Japan is.
Yes, very much so. As I'm learning.
I think you signed up at the tipping point. I did this for a year and a half of just not only just building the brand, but just becoming an industry expert. And when I say building the brand, I don't mean like building the brand by getting clients, because if you know my history, I was not getting clients in that year and a half. And just over time, like Cody joined and like, boom, clients started signing up. And part of it was I had a lot more confidence during sales calls because I had someone who had my back and someone who was really intelligent with ads and someone who could deliver immediate ROI. But at the same time, like I have, I pulled these off my wall real quick. But I have three framed magazines that I wrote in. So we have Lawn and Landscape magazine. This was published in July of 2019. So Cody and I, we signed the paperwork to be partners in January of 2019. I have Turf magazine. This was, oh, by the way, that Lawn and Landscape one, I sent that in like December. So like it took them like 7 months to publish it. So this Turf magazine is spring of 2019. And so for those of you who are watching this in the future on YouTube, you're going to see these. For those of you who are listening to this in the past, watch this episode again in the future so we can get another view on our YouTube channel. But this is Turf magazine. This was published in spring of 2019. Again, I sent this to them in December of 2018. This was Green Industry Pros magazine. This was, this just says spring of 2019. And again, sent this to them in December of 2018. Lawn and Landscape, this was I was just a contributor to in like an article called Digital Dominance. It wasn't even an article I wrote. It was just, they wanted my opinion on something and they put me in it. For Turf magazine, I wrote an article. I'm actually not on the front page of this one, but Turf magazine, I wrote an article called, I sent this to them in December. They published this in early spring, I think, or like very early spring or late winter. And it said how to market your lawn care business in the winter. And then Green Industry Pros. Oh no, actually the one in Turf magazine wasn't that one. I sent them 2 articles. They published one in December about how to market your landscaping business in the winter. And this one they published in an actual print magazine that was how to find quality lawn care clients. Actually, no, it wasn't. It was the fly-by-night guys are not stealing your business.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was one that popped off. I actually read the comment from that on air, like on this podcast in one of our episodes. That when somebody read it. Finally, Green Industry Pros. I'm on the front cover of this one right here. Beyond the Blade: How to Find Quality Lawn Care Customers, page 54. And maybe it was that one that had the glowing review of, but. These were all things that I was doing that I was trying to get in before Cody came on board. Those got published after Cody came on board, and he rode the wave.
It was great. Recommend.
No, but seriously, like that's what I was doing to kind of establish that industry expertise. I was doubling down on that. I was pitching those articles, and it wasn't just like reaching out to them and like paying to be in them. I never paid to be in any of these. I did my research. And I found the people to pitch this article to, and I pitched it to them. And I use, if you look at the fly-by-night guys aren't stealing your article or your article, aren't stealing your customers. You look at that article, the opening paragraph of that, like literally pretends like I'm a landscaper talking to a client. And it's because I've been in these groups and I know how these clients and these customers of theirs communicate to them. And it was just, those were like the tipping points. And then being on industry podcasts, it's just,
that was big.
That's what we mean by being an industry expert is don't just peruse the groups and look for clients, like provide value. And this is why, like, knowing that labor is an issue, knowing that Maintenance costs are an issue. Knowing that gas prices are rising, so landscapers are paying way more for gas in their equipment and on the vehicles, and being able to write about that stuff, but also incorporating your marketing aspect in those articles, that really sets you apart.
Oh, as you wrote this, I think I said the opposite, because I said you don't need to know how to build a retaining wall, but I think you're saying that you should know how to build a retaining wall. Am I wrong?
Me?
Yeah.
No, you're not wrong at all. No, you don't need to know how to build a retaining wall, but you need to know you need to know how to build it. But if you know what a retaining wall is and what the purpose is, then
Right.
It's helpful. I don't know how to build a retaining wall, but I do know some aspects of it. You can't build it on the ground. You actually have to lay a foundation for it. Mm-hmm. But these are things that you can learn too. There's plenty of, I'll tell clients this all the time. This is kind of a sidebar, but we, on our website, we tell people how to do their own marketing, how to optimize your own website, how to run your own Google ads. And when I tell clients that they should write articles on how to build their own retaining wall, for the DIYers, they always say hey, I don't want to tell people how to build a retaining wall. I want them to pay me to build it for them. And I said, hey, if people are looking to build their own retaining wall, they're going to build it themselves no matter what. And whether they get the information from you or not, it's out there. Anybody can learn. Just like anybody can learn SEO, anybody can learn Google ads as long as they want to put the time into it.
Dude, I love that. So it's my favorite too, because I'll search for something I'm going to do this myself. And then I start reading the article and I get a fourth of the way done. And then I say, I'm going to pay somebody. I'm definitely not doing this now. This is way harder than I thought.
Yeah, that's kind of how I do it too. But yeah, anybody can learn how to do it. And the whole reason why we write a lot of what we write is because we're confident that the DIYers are going to try to DIY it themselves anyways. But people will usually get about a quarter of the way through it and go, and so then scroll to the bottom and go, nah, screw that. We're just going to hire this out. And so, I could learn how to build a retaining wall if I wanted to and speak the language better, but I don't think that's going to help our sales anymore if I know it from the ground up. It might help SEO. I might be able to write about it a lot more, but if I'm trying to get out of the business, I would need Eva to know how to build a retaining wall. And I'm not going to put that, I'm not going to force her to learn how to build a retaining wall just so she can write about it. Mm-hmm. So, there's a delineation between diving too deep into it and diving into, what it takes to just, be coined as an industry expert.
But there is, I think you do still need to be fanatical. You need to be obsessed to some degree.
Yeah.
To accomplish most things. Anything that you want to, if you want exceptional results, you need to do exceptional work. You do not get to just casually pursue something if you are serious about wanting to be exceptional in it.
And this goes into what you said in the last episode, which is if you want to treat it like a hobby, it'll pay like a hobby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe that.
And I have a very addictive personality. And that's usually not a very good thing to say, but when it comes to doing things, I get I dive into it. I want to start my own lawn care business. That's true. I do. But when I'm not doing it right now because I don't know how much time I have to commit to it. Because once I commit, I'm in it. And when I picked landscaping, I was in it. And I become obsessed with things. And it's part of my ADD. I just focus on there's two aspects of ADD, right? One, you can't focus on anything. And the other one is you focus super intensely on something so hard that everything else is blocked out. And both are somewhat unhealthy, but
but it's how you get things done. This is true. I'm the same way when it comes to I'll just, when I find something and I decide that I'm serious about it, everything else just goes out the window. Literally everything else in my life. And I'm doing this until I have to sleep. And I will do it until I sleep, most likely.
And it is a double-edged sword though, because you focus really hard on that, but then when you should be focusing on other things, all you can think about is the other thing.
Oh, yeah. I think anybody listening, I would hope that they know that you're going to neglect some other parts of your life if you want to, you know, I can just keep repeating it the same way, but if you want, how else can you say it, right? If you want to be exceptional, you have to do exceptional things.
Mm-hmm. I need to slow down how fast I talk. I was just thinking about this is ADD, but I feel like if anybody listens to this podcast on like 1.5 speed, they're not going to be able to understand anything I'm saying.
Oh, that's a true life hack, right? The people who are like, yeah, I'm going to get more time back in my life by listening to things faster. Something like that.
And then I'm over here talking like a million miles a minute and they're just like, I can't keep up. No, I do. I need to slow down. But what else did I have on here? I have a lot. I have this was one that really got us on the radar too, and it was following relevant podcasts and YouTube channels. Mm-hmm. So I think before I was published in any of those magazines, I was on a podcast, a local lawn care podcast, and they were only like 12 episodes in. Mm-hmm. I got on episode number 13. So I was able to listen to basically every episode up until, the newest one.
You went in person to like the place they're recording.
Yeah, because this is a unique situation, and part of business is just luck, honestly. And this was, I actually lived close to this guy who had this podcast, and I had no idea. This was in Kansas City. And so I was like, dude, let's meet up and just have a podcast recording in person. And he just recorded on his iPhone, like just put the iPhone down in the middle. And then like, we just recorded. And I got to talk about some like free ways it's been so long since I've listened to it. It's on our website, the Evergrow website, but, and he was actually our first client mm-hmm. after Cody and I partnered up. Mm-hmm. And he was on that awful Rainmaker package that we take a dump on all the time. And his website was the first website we built when we realized we had to build websites. Mm-hmm. So it was also awful, not a great representation of our business. And now has a website built through our competitor, which looks great, by the way. Like it really does. I can't knock them. I think we kind of damaged that relationship a little bit. But it's okay. We learned from our mistakes, and we have created a lot better products and processes that are, blowing results out of the water. So,
and life is big. Everybody's the villain in somebody else's story. That's unavoidable. So,
I just talked to a prospect from that's in Kansas, or he's in Missouri. He's not in the Kansas City area. He's in Missouri, but he said that he actually heard us on that podcast. This was like a week ago.
What?
Yeah.
Jeez.
So I'm like, you heard us on a podcast on an episode that aired 5 years ago on a client we no longer work with, and you called us.
Those things have staying power. It's cool. But we've been recently looking into domain acquisitions, like expired domain acquisitions, specifically for the benefit of backlink portfolios. So we can play around and test what those things would be worth to us. So that's fun. That's just another
want to talk about the one. You want to talk about the one we just bought?
No, I don't.
No, it's secret. It's secret. No one will know. Can we talk about how much we paid for it?
Later.
All right, later. We want to keep things under wraps.
Yeah.
So on the podcast thing. So we've been on quite a bit of podcasts. We've been on I'll just say them, because if you Google them, you can find them. Lawn care leaders. So I'll do it in order. So Lawn Care Leaders is our first one. That was with Britt Dowd. And then we were on $1 Million Landscaper. We've been on them like 5 times now. But that's our industry contact we've mentioned before. Scott Molchan. He's got his own like course. He's got $1 Million Landscaping company. His whole like moniker is the $1 Million Landscaper. So obviously, but he has us on his podcast quite a bit. Which is really good from a lead flow perspective. We've been on Laura Reale's Landscape Marketing Secrets podcast once. We've been on Andrew Martinez's Lone Star Lawn Talk podcast.
Mhm.
And I think that's all so far. We were on Chris.
I just reached out yesterday to get published in a
Australian landscaping magazine.
Yeah, where we basically we've been published everywhere over here. So figure we'll try to give it a shot and see if we can get elsewhere.
Not in Synced magazine.
They're new, right? So
yeah, they're new.
We'll have to reach out to them too. But
so, and that's one thing about being the industry experts is like, we know those podcasts, we know the new magazines coming up, we know all of this because we're doubling down on the niche, and it's really paid off. And if you don't do that, if you keep niche shopping every year, you're never going to find success. Well, I mean, you might get lucky, but
yeah, every year, that's just not enough time.
I'm seeing people niche shop every month in Facebook groups.
What do you even do in a month? Like, what can you get done? I think you get one thing done, one big thing done in a month.
I think they reach out, they try to find clients, they jump to the client acquisition point, and they don't find clients in a month, so then they try a different niche. And they're just that's honestly what it looks like to me. And in fact, one person in the digital agency or the marketing agency owners group, I saw her in a landscaping group that I am an admin of. Post about I think she just posts about like what common problems do you guys see in this in client acquisition, and I just commented and said, fancy seeing you here, because she asked advice all the time in the marketing agency owners group, and I usually comment, but it was weird for me because I'm like, weren't you just looking at roofers like last month? Like, now you're in landscaping, and maybe she's testing the waters, which is totally cool. But if
would it just be better to go through an aggregator like a marketplace such as Upwork or Fiverr? Do you think if that's, we've talked
to
about
find your first? Yeah, I mean, yes and no. Yes,
if you're going to hop every month, would you just be better off going over there?
Yeah, but you also need to know how to actually get work from those aggregators, because that's a big industry issue that a lot of newcomers are facing, which is I mean, when I first started Evergrow, I was on Upwork, and I didn't land any clients. I submitted bid after bid after bid and never got anything.
Do these people have their own sites? Are they writing too? Like, do they have their own blogs? Because to me,
I don't think so.
That should be 101. You should be writing, and you should have your own site, and you should be writing your own blog posts, because it's a very
established authority. Yeah. Just get out there and start writing, have your own website. We have it on this is, I think, a lot of success for me and writing on the Evergrow website, and then also writing for publications, that came a lot from Gary Vee's book, Crush It. And just the kind of that mentality. But that's kind of how I started getting clients. I get dumped on quite a bit because we don't have an outreach style. Like we don't do any cold calling, cold email, messaging, or anything. Everything is inbound. And when I tell people it took me 6 months to get my first client, they lasted 2 months, and then it took me another 10 months to get my next client, they almost kind of look down on me, and they're like, you could have been cold calling and growing your agency way faster than that. I'm like,
aren't these guys smaller than you?
Maybe. Well, they don't say they are. They say they're bigger than me, but their numbers don't quite add up from a business owner's perspective. So
those are weird conversations.
I said,
somebody who said that's like, what do they say again? How do they word it?
What they say to me.
Do they ask you how does this happen? I know nothing. I think hopefully by now every listener knows that I live in my own world where I just don't know how this stuff works.
Yeah, you're talking about how they ask me how I didn't get clients by cold calling.
Yeah. How does that come about?
Yeah, they usually say you should if you cold called, you would have you could get customers a lot faster. And I usually say, sure, maybe, but they also might not be my right customers. And then if you have an argument against that, then my main point that I say is I have a philosophy against it, because if I'm offering SEO and Google Ads services to my clients in order to get them clients, then that's what I'm going to do to get mine. And if I am cold calling, then that is hypocritical, because I'm basically saying I can't trust my own services to provide me leads. Therefore, why should you?
This is funny because if you actually talk to business owners and you have an inner relationship with them, they'll tell you, they're like, yeah, I get calls about that every day. I'm in Japan, right? I just had that conversation yesterday. No joke. Like, I had an interpreter, but he was like, you do that?
It's a global issue.
Yeah, like they call me like 3 times, 4 times a day. So
you tell them we don't call anybody?
I did. Yeah.
Wait, Jenny's dad his mind was, we talked about this in another episode, but you said his mind was blown when you're like, we don't reach out to people.
Oh yeah, we were on a walk and there was a yard sign or something, and I think Jenny was just joking around. She said like, are they your client? I said, no, they're not. She's like, why not? And I said, they haven't reached out to us yet. So
and you told her dad, and her dad was like, what? Like, you wait for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, that business model or that mindset of, wow, because it's not that you're doing nothing. There's a whole bunch of work that goes into setting that up to be the person that they reach out to when it comes time to search for somebody.
How much work, you ask? 1.5 years of work.
Yeah, 100%. So
it's kind of like why I'm not a big Alex Hormozzi fan. He was big up, and I don't hate him. Like, I don't think like
Alex Hormozzi. Sounds
like he's like a new guru. I think he's like a newer like Ty Lopez, except before I offend anybody listening to this, I think he's better than Ty Lopez because the advice that he actually gives is pretty decent. But what I don't like about him is that he's selling a dream that's not necessarily. It's kind of like who's this guy here? This guy that wrote Timothy Ferriss, who wrote the 4-Hour Workweek.
Tim Ferriss, yeah.
You're selling a dream that's like, you're making it way easier than it is. You're making it seem way easier than it is, and like I don't really get behind that. But then he also says things like, "I've got nothing to sell you," and like this. It's like, well, I mean, that's a good sales strategy that I use too. But you kind of do have something to sell me, and then at the same time. He also hangs out with like Dean. I think he hangs out with like Dean Graziosi, and then like Billie Jean and other influencers.
I know that one.
Billie Jean? I don't like Billie Jean at all. Like, I am very honest about that, so you should watch not you, maybe the listener, watch the CoffeeZilla Billie Jean debate, and it all stemmed by CoffeeZilla saying that Billie Jean's marketing is cringy, which it is, but it's good. Like, it attracts people. And Billie Jean got so offended by that and was absolutely ridiculous on this debate that he was with CoffeeZilla, and made himself look so bad.
Do you think these people are real though when they do that, or do you think that they're just doing it for the views and for the attention? Based on
the debate that he had with CoffeeZilla, I would say Billie Jean is legitimately, authentically an a-hole. Like, but the thing with Billie Jean is he is a good marketer. Like, you can't argue with that. So, but it's one of the reasons why I don't like Billie Jean. He also does the sell the dream thing, and I have such a strong stance against MLMs. Not that he has one or is one or whatever, but they do the same thing. So anybody who does the same thing by default, in my mind, is just not okay.
Yeah, I just have a hard time believing that those people are real. And if they are, I just don't want to. Some of the things that you see on YouTube about, I don't know, the shocking behavior and that sort of thing. I like to think that it's all just done for views and that none of it's truly how they think or believe. And if it is, then I don't want to know. I don't want to live that life. Let me keep living this way. Because if
you go on Reddit,
what?
If you go on Reddit and look at some like people who work for corporate companies that hired Billie Jean's agency, there's a lot of horror stories on there. But there are certain guys like Alex Hormozzi. Like, I can't find anything on him that like is overly negative. And it just, he has a lot of the same messaging that these other gurus have. And I just kind of naturally avoid it.
I Googled it, but it just auto connects to Romaji, which is a Jap. I think it's because I'm in Japan. Romaji is like English, Japanese thing. Anyway. Cool. Cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, let's see what else
if
I have
I ever
on here.
meet these people, I think they're going to be really see, this is the thing. If this podcast ever gets really big and crazy, I'm just going to feel very weird the whole time, because every time that Jake shares our viewership and that sort of thing, I'm like, wow, that's crazy. I don't know. Like, I hope I'm doing whatever it is that they want us to do, and that they like this, because I'm not. Well, how did I describe? I described it the other day. I said, this is weird because usually I'm not the personality. I'm not a personality, but you've really like owned pretty much all of this. And then in this case, I kind of am a personality, and that's very weird because I never wanted to do that. And I'm not going to change either. So that's the other thing too.
You're like, I'm a personality the way that Alex Trebek was a personality.
Yeah. So anyway, it's just not going to change. So I don't know what else to do, I think. I also Googled Billie Jean, but it was just Michael Jackson that came up, of course.
That's awesome. I love that song, though.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic song.
A classic.
I only had one more thing, really. And that was being relevant in Facebook groups, and also learning. I don't know why I said being relevant in Facebook groups. I read the wrong note. My one more thing was knowing that your prices are going to match the profit of your potential clients in this industry. Mm-hmm. So if you're just kind of randomly charging a price, but then the pricing model doesn't work out, then you shouldn't do that. And you can know this by knowing like average profit margins and close rates and things like this. But this is honestly a topic for another episode, because I can go really into it. I just had someone reach out to me and tell me like, this is what their pricing was, and they were in the junk removal niche. And I said, okay, cool. So based on the average profit margin and the average close rate and the average lifetime value of that client, which we did kind of an exercise with, I'm like, are you comfortable with providing 180 some junk removal leads in a month? And he goes, no. And I'm like, okay, well then your prices are too high, because that's what that's what your clients are going to expect in order for them to be profitable. And I think that's a good episode on its own. We're at 55 minutes, and I don't want to keep going.
We've been heavy in the business lately. Well, we did it. We started getting heavier about it too, because we were less about business. So we're trying to. But it's like, it's hurt my head a little bit. But I think next time we should do the books. I think that'd be fun. The books one.
All right. Usually we riff these, so we've got to actually sit down and be like, what books have we read before? I mean, even with some of our employees, like we send them books and we just say, read these. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we could do that for sure. There's some that I don't know about as much business management, is more just good marketing. Not the good marketing you can still read in books, and it hasn't changed that much. And just getting those principles down, I think, is more important than, not more important, it's equally important to what you read online. So we could talk about that too.
I like that.
I'm going to go to the cone beanie now.
The what?
The cone beanie.
Oh, the cone beanie. Bring you back full circle. We went out to eat yesterday because Lauren had a bad day at work. So I have leftovers.
What you got? What is it?
I built my own burger. So I always get gluten-free buns just in case Lauren wants to try some of it. So it's on a gluten-free bun, just an Angus beef patty with feta cheese, jalapenos, garlic aioli, and a cheesy jalapeno dip.
Cool.
And then she also has some leftover pasta. I don't know. I don't remember what it is, but it's obviously gluten-free. But yeah, that's what I have.
That's detailed. I wouldn't have known all that. I just said, I got a burger. And then,
well, it was build your own burger. So I handpicked all the ingredients. So that's why I know everything on it.
Right. Okay. It's making sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't memorize. I didn't see it on the menu and just memorize the menu item. Caramelized
this
onion seared to perfection. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for tuning in yet again to another Everbros podcast episode. We'll catch you next time.
See you.